Hello, my name is Shalinda Davis, and I am here to tell you my testimony. So, I will start with my testimony moving to Atlanta, Georgia, period. Before coming here, I was with my cousin, and she was pregnant with triplets. I was committed to helping her and her husband with those triplets because I had recently graduated from college and I didn't have anywhere else that I really wanted to be. I love them and I love those babies that weren't born yet, and I wanted to stay and help her. But I felt something within me from God telling me that I need to move and that I need to go to Atlanta, Georgia, period. I knew that I needed to get my master's degree in social work, but I didn't know where exactly I wanted to be. I know that I had somewhat of a PWI experience, and I was interested in an HBCU in a predominantly black institution in the South, but I didn't know where. So, in the midst of her trial, we kept going to a meeting every night where they would bring in prophets, and the prophets would prophesy into people's lives. And on this particular night, I was there and I had been waiting on God's voice, something, a clear sign for him to tell me, should I stay with my cousin or should I move to Atlanta? And a guy had came and I hadn't heard anything for several weeks, and neither had she. And on this particular night, the guy called me up and he said, God said, move. Just 3 words. So that was confirmation, but I still didn't know what university, of what capacity, and all of that. So I eventually prayed and decided on the illustrious Clark Atlanta University. And I didn't have any money. I didn't have any housing. I didn't have anything. I had $100 and 2 suitcases that my grandparents bought for me, and I had a Greyhound ticket. I didn't know where I was going to live. I didn't know how I was going to make it. I just knew that God would help me. If God gives you vision, he has to give you provision. And so he gave me the vision to go. Now I'm thinking, okay, God, you have to provide for me because there is nothing that I have or that I can give. So when I arrived, I went to campus, and when I got there at first, I got dropped off near Magic City, but I didn't know what a Magic City was. So I thought they were hookers. It was 2 a.m. when I arrived because it was a 14-hour bus ride. And so I was like, I stepped down off of the bus, and when I got there at the edge of the last step, I almost turned around and got back on the bus to go back to North Carolina because I was petrified. Luckily, I did know one person here. She lived kind of far away, but she was always in the city. She was willing to help me out, so she picked me up and she brought me to the university the next day so that I could try to find housing. So I arrived to the housing administration office, and immediately the lady tells me, oh, we don't have any housing. I said, yes, you do. I'm going to leave and I'm going to come back in a few hours, and you're going to tell me that you found somewhere for me to live. Confidently. Why did I say that? So confidently? Because when God gives you vision, he must give you provision. You're not going to send me out here and have me be homeless. That is not the vision that you gave me. You gave me the vision of me going to school, and I'm not saying it will be struggle free, but you did give me the vision of going to school. Therefore, I expect that you give me housing and that you give me food, because the Bible says that he provides for the fowl in the air am I not more precious? And I know that I am, and I know that He will provide for me. So I came back a few hours later. I kind of gave myself a tour of the school. And after my tour, I go back and there's this girl there, and she looks somewhat unkempt. And she says, we do have one room available. And she goes, oh, that's in my suite. We're going to be suite mates. And I'm like, oh, cool. So we wound up being in the same suite, and that's how it all began. So, of course, I matriculate through grad school, and in the midst of all of that, I didn't have a lot of money. I had been searching for jobs for 3 months at this point. And literally, people would come up to me. God told me to buy you groceries today. My roommates were really nice. They're like, if you're hungry, which I was hungry a lot, but I didn't have any money for food. I only got a $1,500 refund check. And I know that might sound like a lot, but it's not a lot of money when that's all you have. So I was struggling. I struggled through it, but I made it. So I matriculated through grad school. I graduated, and it was so not easy. But I was able to get an apartment. I was able to make friends. And when I was in those in-between times, my friends looked out for me. I looked out for them, and we were just a big family. Sometimes I slept on the floor. Sometimes they slept on my couch. It just really depended on the year. But God really provided for us. So in the midst of me being in grad school, I was able to, I had a vision about this building, and I rode past the building and I recognized it. And every time I rode past that building, I got a jolt, like, you should be there. And I didn't know why. And so one day I was like, you know what is this place? So I looked it up, and I found out what it was, and it was an early childhood education center. And at that time, I was working for another early childhood center, but I could not keep my job because they would not let me demote myself to part-time. They said full-time or nothing. They really didn't try to work with somebody that was trying to better themselves. But so I said, okay, this is where I want to do my internship at instead of where I'm working at now, because they're more willing to work with me doing an internship and working a part-time job. So I went there and I got the job, and I worked my butt off Monday through Friday, and I worked the weekends because I was working 2 jobs. I had 1 internship, and I was going to school 3 nights a week. So I don't know how I made it except for God. That was nothing but God providing for me. People were giving me rides. I never took the train. I never took the train. I always took Uber, or people gave me rides. Mostly people give me rides. It saved me so much money. Thank God for that. And so moving on, I was able to get promoted. So I met a guy. They had just hired him. And he was basically in charge of hiring what we call the family support team. And I knew I wanted that position. I was getting my master's in social work. It fit right into what I wanted to do. So I did not introduce myself at all. I just said, are you going to hire me or promote me? And he goes, well, hi, what's your name? I immediately asked for what I want. Like, that's just how I am. And so he's like, yeah, like, he wanted me on the team because he saw that I was like a go-getter and everything. And they did not keep me at that center. They transitioned me to another center. And so years prior to that, I want to say 2 years before I graduated grad school, I heard the voice of God say, Chicago. I don't want to go to Chicago. I kept saying it. I actually recorded a video of myself thinking, like, am I going to get my PhD at the University of Chicago? Like, what's happening with Chicago? Because sometimes I'll get nuggets from God, but I'll never get, like, the full pie. Like, I'll get a little slice. But I heard him say that. And then another day I was writing down my goals for 2019. I knew 2019 would be, hold on, I was writing down my goals for 2019 and I heard it again, Chicago. And I'm like, I don't want to go to Chicago. And I said, you know what, God, I hear you, because it was the third time I had went to my friend's house. It was the month before graduation, and he goes, you had to go to Chicago. And I'm like, all right, give me a year. Just give me a year. I really want to work this job. I really want to do it. Like, just give me a year and I'll go. Like, whatever you say. And so he gave me that year. At 6 months into the job, I was miserable. I wasn't supposed to be there. But I recognized that I put myself in that situation and that it was time to move on. So I was actually excited about not necessarily going to Chicago, but transitioning out of something that did not make me happy. And so I go stay with my sister for that summer. And by August, I discover like this great position. I'm like, oh, this sounds awesome. Let me apply to this. But I had to talk to God about it because I was really wondering, like, should I just work while I'm in Raleigh and save money? Like, once again, you gave me this vision. You have to provide for me. So the amazing part about this was I left the job, but my boss did not exit me out of their account. So I got paid a check and a half as if I worked, and I did not work. So that to me was kind of amazing because he provided for me again. And I was like, yeah, this aligns with what you told me to do. I know that is right because you have given me the provision. And so I'm on the phone with the executive director, and she's like, yeah, this position, we provide housing and food for you. All this time I'm looking for apartments, and I'm looking for like how am I going to get around? What's the closest apartment but the least expensive, to the job? And all this time he's like, no, I got you. Like, you trusted me to do it, so I'm going to make it available to you. And I'm like, wow, like, look at God. So of course I announced that the glory of God is amazing. Like, look at what he did. And so I go and I work the job. I knew before I left, though, I remember being on the plane and God says, don't forget the vision. Even when you can't, there were clouds there, when you're on a plane and you're riding between the clouds. He said, even when you can't see the vision, just know that it's there. And when he said, know that it's there, the clouds departed. It was the most beautiful thing ever. And I had arrived in Chicago. And so upon my arrival, I was like, all right, God, let's do this. Immediately got frustrated because I couldn't figure out Uber. It was too expensive. I didn't have a lot of money. I'm like, oh no. But I eventually figured it out, and it was great. And so I get there and I'm working the job. I was working with students with disabilities. And I thought that my assignment was the students, which in part it was. But my assignment was also my coworkers. So I had to see who I was outside of Blackness, outside of the South, outside of warm weather. I had to see how I operated in a place that was supposed to make me uncomfortable so that I could become uncomfortable yet comfortable in who I am. And I was never ashamed to speak my mind. I was never ashamed to say, at first I was, but as time went on, I said, they're not ashamed of who they are. Why do I have to be ashamed of who I am? And that after, I remember walking in and God said, this will only work if you choose to be who you are. I said, who I am? What do you mean? So I'm a Christian, African American, Southern, conservative, progressive female, straight female. And I was with a gay Puerto Rican Jewish male, a Jewish female from the East Coast, a black guy with locks from the South Side of Chicago, a light-skinned Indian female, suburban white boy, um, and a light skinned curly hair, assertive female. And the head of the staff were predominantly Caucasian with very progressive mindsets. So this is the opposite of what I'm used to in the South, because typically in the South, the older generation, they are all about conserving what they believe, being separate from one another, not really interested in diversity or intermingling with one another. Um, we're moving towards that, but it's like a snail. And so seeing white people like that was odd to me. And at that time, I had my big afro and it was golden, and it was just different for me. And so I was astonished, but pleasantly surprised that that's how they were. And I'm like, oh, I can be who I am, and you guys aren't gonna, like, I don't have to talk prim and proper and in order for you guys to accept me for who I am. That's an amazing feeling, to be accepted. But I had a list of things prior to leaving that God told me was going to happen. He said radio. Like, once again, I get the nuggets, I don't get the full pie. Radio, isolation, lesson, make sure odd jobs are downtown, university, and 6 months. Oh, and March 15th. Though, and I put it in my phone. Every time I heard something from him, I would jot it down. All of those things came to pass. So the 6 months was, I had the job from September to March, but I did not work 2.5, 3 months of that. So I was only there for 6 months. I pray that my math is correct. About 6 months. Isolation, I was stripped from everything I knew to be true in my own little bubble, in my own world. And it was flipped upside down to this opposite world. It's cold. It's very white. It's very diverse on the staff. The students were adults and not children. It was just complete opposite of what I was used to. And so, yeah. I learned also that I had to learn a lesson, and I had a lot of lessons. One of them, though, was to not judge people by how they look, because when you're so used to being in the seat of people judging you, you become very judgy. Oh, like, all white people are racist, or all young people think this way, and I realized everybody doesn't think the same way and doesn't act the same way. And I actually got very close to all of my coworkers, no matter their background. I remained true to who I was, and so did they. And even though we had some disagreements, it never deterred us from maintaining a friendship or a level of respect for one another. And I thought that was amazing. Moving forward, I kept telling my coworkers, something is going to happen in March. I don't know what it is, but something is gonna happen. And I told them this October 2018. So January 2019 comes around, and I'm like, what is this? I never looked at the what do you call them, the Instagram live videos. Never really watched them. If I did, I clicked on it by mistake and I quickly exited out of it. So I saw this lady, and she was talking about film, and I was like, what is this? So I clicked on it, and the more she talked, the more I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so exciting. She was talking about, this is how you get into the film industry. You don't need to go to film school. I'm like, I already got my degree in mass communications, and I got it in, you have to take broadcasting, journalism, public relations, like all that. And I'm like, yeah, I really did that. So it's cool. I'm a step ahead. And, the whole time she's like, no, it's not about what you know. It's about what you can do. And I'm like, what you can do? That's amazing. So, I'm still letting God know. So I am so interested. I'm like, okay, God, this is amazing. I don't know how I can afford it because literally, guys, I'm making $400 checks. And she was asking us to pay her $600. And I'm like, that's pretty cheap because film school was not that cheap. And so I was like, okay, how can I pay this? So I was making it work. Like, I'm trying to get these extra hours. Like, they increased our pay that next semester. So I'm like, bet. Like, everything was like coming together. And one day, we had a group app, and in that app, a lady posted, "We're looking for production assistants who are looking to gain experience for a low budget feature film." I did not get that message until 2 days after she posted it, and nobody had responded to it. Immediately I respond, and after my response, it's like 10 more responses after mine. I'm like, that was meant for me. Like, nobody else read it, no one saw it until after I saw it. That is mine. Is that why I'm in Chicago? Question mark. Like, so I was able to be on my first film set as a production assistant, and I sucked. I was terrible. I mean, I wasn't the worst, but they could tell that I didn't have like get it factor. Like, I didn't know what I was doing, and I'm like, it's my first day, help. But even though I was terrible, I kept a good attitude, and I kept trying to work hard. I didn't always know the lingo, but I had, done a little bit of research, and I was just trying. I was trying my best, even though I sucked. So after that, they were like, well, we need some extras in this movie. I'll do it. So I was able to be a PA and background in the movie. And after that, I kept hearing March 15th, like I told you before. That happened the week of March 15th, where I was able to be on the film set for 2 weeks. And after that was over, I was like, wow, I was on a film set. And I heard God say, it's time to go. Which I also had a feeling about that too, but it wasn't a strong feeling. It got stronger towards the end of March, like after I've been on the film set. And so I'm thinking, oh, a job is coming. I'm going to be executive producer. What? You don't go from PA in 2 weeks to executive producer. Like, that's not how this works. And so I'm like, oh, I'm going to, like, something amazing is going to happen. So I'm sitting on my floor, and God's like, you got to go to DC. I don't want to go to DC. I want to go back to Atlanta because that's where all the film productions are happening at. Why do I need to go to DC? There's nothing there. Nothing there. He's like, you got to go to DC. So I'm like waiting for something amazing to happen. I'm applying to different jobs, and like nobody's calling me back. So I'm sitting on my floor, and I'm like, God, you told me to leave, but nothing's happening. And he goes, well, if I told you to go, then go. What? Just go? Just go. So originally he set it up for me where he set it up and I went. This time he's saying, you go and I'll set it up. I said, okay, Father, I will do that. I will definitely do that. And so I went, and the last time he set it up for me and I went. This time he's trying to set it up for me. No, he's asking me to go, and he'll set it up when I get there. Period. So I get to DC, and I start booking, myself for these shoots, and it was bad. I burned so many I think I burned like 3 or 4 bridges on these film sets. It was probably only one experience that ended well. And I was only there for like a month. 30 days, probably less than that. And I learned in DC how to not burn bridges because my mentor was telling me, no, that is not how the film industry works. It's not like corporate America. This is how it works. And I'm like, got you. So I had to go to DC. I'm glad I listened because I could have completely tarnished my reputation had I come straight to Atlanta trying to do those things. And your name gets around. It's a small industry. And no one would have ever hired me back. So that's why he made me go to DC. Lesson learned there. Thirdly, I got a call from my cousin saying, we're going to take a trip to Atlanta. We didn't invite you because we didn't think you'd want to come because you're in DC. And I'm like, I want to come. Had no money. I want to come. I want to see you guys. I miss you guys so much. And so that night, I'm like getting into bed and God goes, why don't you just stay in Atlanta? And I'm like, are you sure? Because you told me to come here. Did I learn everything that I needed to learn here? Like that was 30 days. And he's like, just go and stay. Oh, I forgot something. I was sitting on my floor in Chicago. And I was waiting for something to happen. And God says, to move to the DMV. And in that moment, I have not talked to this guy in 5 years. I get a text from this guy that lives in DC. I'm like, I didn't even know he had my phone number. I never exchanged numbers with him. Not that I recall. And so I'm like, I hear you loud and clear. You wanted me to go. And we didn't really talk much after that. Like, he just sent me that text in the moment that I was thinking about it because God wanted to confirm and affirm in me, this is what I'm telling you to do. So I just thought that was so amazing that he could use random people like that. And even backtracking some more when I was in Chicago, the part about the radio, I was looking at this thing on Eventbrite and they said, come, it's a mixer for people that are interested in film. I'm like, oh, that's so cool. So I went the first time and the way it went down was crazy. So I wasn't going to go. My friend had called me, one that I hadn't talked to in a long time. And I was like, okay, this just means I shouldn't go. I'm just going to stay home because I got scared. And I was terrified. I had asked my roommate to go with me. Now, mind you, my roommate never went anywhere, did anything. He didn't even go to the cafeteria with us. Maybe like 5 times in the semester he would go. And so I asked him to go. And he came out of his room from playing his video games, which is a big deal. And he's like, aren't we going to the thing, the mixer? And I was like, oh, yeah, I'm just not going to go. Don't worry about it. He's like, no, get up, get your clothes on. We're going. He did not talk like that. Like, I was the big sister and he was the little sister and the little brother. And that's how that was supposed to go. But he was like demanding me to do it. And I was like, okay, you're being used right now by God. Let me get my clothes on and let me just go watch. I'm not going to mingle. I'm not going to say anything to anybody. So we walk in. He sits at the edge of the bar because it's a bar. And I like scooch in down some seats just so I can better see the podcast happen. And this very, very drunk man, old white man, walks up to me. And I'm like, he's like, here, you need to go speak. You need to go up there and talk. And I'm like, who are you? I was like, no, I'm fine. Like, no, you want to go speak. Go speak. And I was like, no, I'm okay. So he calls over the director. And he's like, what's your name? And I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, I just really wanted to watch. So I introduced myself. And he's like, yeah, come on. Come on, join the podcast. And I'm like, okay. So I go up there and honestly, yo, I kill it. Like, I'm not tooting my own horn, but I did a great job, because walking up to the stool, I was like shaking in my boots. But when I sat down, like the Spirit of God just poured over me and I just started talking. Like all my nerves were gone. It was good. It was amazing. And so I went back a few more times, and then it led up to, me leaving and going to DC. And so after that, I make my way back here. And before I left, that night that before I left, I said, God, if you want me to stay in DC, in Atlanta, you're gonna have to show me, like, I am pulling on your collar right now, because I don't want to, and I was crying, I don't want to make any moves that you did not approve of. So if you want me to go, you're gonna have to show me that you want me to go, because I never want to be disobedient to your orders. I wake up the next day, $30 magically in my account. Don't know how it got there. To this day, the ticket to get to Atlanta was $30. So that was the sign for me to go. And so I left. And I came here and I'm like, yes, I get to work in the film industry. It's going to be amazing. That is not what happened. I get here, I can't find anything. Nothing. And so I'm like, okay, I have got to start making money somehow. I don't know how. But I have got to start making money, even if it's just with gigs. Like, I couldn't any longer find freebie gigs here and work them. Why? Because I didn't have money to get to the freebie gigs. So I had to just figure it out and do other work. And so I'm like, I still want to work in the film industry, but how could I do that? Still make some cash, but maybe not as a PA right now, or a freebie PA. And so I don't remember how, but oh yes, in the midst of me looking for freebie shoots, I stumbled upon working as background, and I submitted my first one. It was for a Netflix show, and I was celebrating my cousin's birthday, and at like 11 o'clock at night, I get this email, and in bold it says Netflix. And weeks before that, my cousin was like, yeah, you're gonna be on Netflix. And I'm like, what? I'm gonna be on Netflix? No, I'm not. What are you talking about? And most certainly I have been doing background work for different movies and TV shows since then. And I'm beginning to see how things are all encompassing. So in the midst of me doing my background work, I found a lady. She's so sweet. She's like, oh yeah, I do brand ambassador work. I'm like, what the heck is that? So she explains to me what it is. I'm like, I can make more money doing random things. It's amazing. But I don't have a car, so that made it kind of difficult. But I did do a few gigs for that. So that helped me bring in more income. And so I'm like praying and fasting. I'm like, God, something has to happen. Something has to change for me. And so I'm like, okay, what else can I do? So I'm like, you get in the state of desperation. I'm like, every day, Indeed. And I hear the voice of God say, you're not going to find the job on Indeed. Indeed.com. I'm doing it anyway. And I didn't get any hits. 0 hits is what I got. And so I'm like, all right, fine. I go look for studios because I'm like, maybe I can just start my own thing somehow, just do background work on the side and support myself that way, and just go to studios and pay for studio time and start my own show. So I'm looking for studios, and I find this lady who's a motivational speaker. She's awesome. She's Christian. She matches everything that I want to do. So I'm reaching out to her, I did something bold. And I told her I wanted to work for her. Weeks go by. She calls me. She interviews me. In short, she wanted me, but she was trying to play me. She was only trying to pay me $1,000 a month and give me a high title. And I'm like, this isn't God, this isn't it. So that same week, I had an interview that my friend had asked me about a month prior. I applied. I didn't think anything about it because I'm like, this isn't what I want to do. I want to be a motivational speaker. I want to be the next Oprah. I don't want to do this job in social work anymore. And so I got the job for that job. And I told her, like, you know, I have other potential opportunities, but if you could send me the contract, that would be great, so I could look over it and so I could see what it is that you want me to do so that I can make sure it's a good fit. She goes, no, you enjoy your new job, like kind of salty, you know. And that at first it hurt my feelings, and then I said, you know what, God, you were protecting me, because she was about to overwork me and underpay me and try to play me because I'm a millennial, and she thought that that's what she could do. And so I said, you know what, I will never treat anybody like that when I come up, and I will be sure to do this for myself and for the glory of God, and not for, because I remember her saying, I don't want any groupies. You're not that popular for me to be your groupie. I literally want to work from you and learn from you. So I end up going to a seminar a few weeks after, and I met a guy, and he's awesome. And he's like, all that's gonna happen is you're gonna be doing the grunt work. You're not gonna really learn how to be a public speaker. You're not gonna really learn how to navigate this world, and you're not going to get anything out of it. And so I say, okay, and that's exactly what would have happened, I think. So moving on, or update, I'm at the point where I'm updating now. So in the midst of all this, God is like, I need to post videos. I've been posting my videos, hopefully encouraging people to do, you know, their work. So currently I'm in the process of getting myself together. I'm about to start this job, and I'm about to start booking myself on speaking engagements. It's going to be so amazing. I'm so excited. And the second half of this year is going to be an amazing second half of the year. So I look forward to just you guys seeing what God has in store for me, for us, because he gives me the messages and I deliver them to you guys. And I just pray that you guys are able to see my testimony and to see what God has done and to be blessed from it. So stay tuned to chapter 2. It is coming up. Thanks. Bye-bye.